106.5. It's time now for Front Page Jacksonville, a show that delves into the issues that affect you. We believe in transparency and providing only the facts. And now, here's Octavius Davis.
We're back in the building on another Sunday morning here on Hot 106.5 FM, the soul of Duval. Good morning to you. I am Octavius, the $1 Million Voice Davis, your host for Front Page Jacksonville. Honored to be here with you as always. Want to give a shout out to Timothy and James. Now, I'm not going to say their last names because they may not want them thrown out there like that, but I want to shout them out. Yesterday, I held a voiceover camp, the $1 Million Voice-Over camp, by the way, and both Timothy and James came through, said they heard it on Hot 106.5. That's why they wanted to come out. They'd always been told they have a nice sounding voice and had always thought about getting into voiceover, but didn't exactly know how to go about doing it. So just want to shout you gentlemen out today. Enjoyed spending time with you on yesterday, dropping some science on you, dropping a little knowledge, some jewels on how this voiceover game truly works. So hopefully I'll have an opportunity to not just work with them, but others as well that are interested in getting into voiceover. And if that's something that you're considering getting into voiceover, I encourage you to go to DaMillionDollarVoice.com. That's DaMillionDollarVoice.com, where you can learn more about myself, my voiceover path, how I show other people how to get into voiceover, or if you're just looking for some merchandise. If you want a $1 Million Voice t-shirt, you can go to the website and click on shop, and you'll be able to get the $1 Million Voice t-shirt, okay? But I'm going to tell you, one of the best-selling items in my store, a couple of years ago, it's been a while since I've done it. I think I'm going to make some more. A couple of years ago, what I was doing, shout out to Jack that's in the studio this morning. Jack, one of the things that I was doing is I would make like these comments on X, and I don't like calling it X. It's Twitter to me. I like referring to it as Twitter. But I would make these posts. And eventually I got to the point, I'm like, you know what? Those are some pretty catchy phrases. I think I'm just going to make a t-shirt out of it. And so on my store, one of the best-selling items is a t-shirt that says, which was a post that I put on X a couple of years ago. It says, everybody want to be grown until it's time to be an adult. Right? That's like one of the best-selling items on the $1 Million store. Everybody want to be grown until it's time to be an adult. And if you have adult children, if you're listening to this right now and you have adult children, you know exactly what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. You are feeling my angst, parental frustration, and everything else right now through this microphone. Because everybody want to be grown until it's time to be responsible. Until it's time to take some accountability. Until it's time to figure it out for yourself. Huh? Everybody want to be grown until it's time to be an adult. So that's where you can go and get that t-shirt if you're interested, DaMillionDollarVoice.com. Look, all kind of craziness is going on. Cars catching on fire at Jacksonville International Airport. The Diddler trial has gotten underway. Are you following the Diddy trial? Are you one of those that like to, be abreast of everything that's happening? You're in the know. Every salacious detail of testimonies and so forth. I got to be honest, it's not my cup of tea. I purposefully avoid getting sucked into like the details of trials like this, and I'll usually just skim the surface so that I just have like a working knowledge of what's going on. And that's pretty much how I come to the show this morning. I just have a working knowledge of what's going on. I don't know no details. Okay, here's the extent of my working knowledge. Sean Diddy Combs is on trial. This past week, Cassie was on the stand. Some text messages were revealed. Some statements were made. Bada bing, bada boom. That's all I know. That's all I know. The details of what all those text messages are, I don't really have enough knowledge to hold a conversation. And I'll tell you why. to a certain extent, depending upon the nature of, I guess you could say the crime, but to a certain extent, situations like these that surround celebrities, it just feels like gossip to me. Just feels like gossip. I've never been one who's gotten into gossip. That's not my thing. Messy gossip at that. Now, I don't know everything that Sean Combs is accused of. I really don't. But I will kind of show where I draw the line in the sand. So when it comes to matters involving consenting adults, that ain't none of my business. That ain't none of my business. Okay? I've seen things on social media all week where people have been like, oh, but, you know, she wanted to leave but couldn't. And, oh, hey, look, I don't know nothing about that, man. Because I've also seen some stuff on the other side of that argument where it's like, well, she initiated this and that. And, you know, so I don't know. All I know is business concerning consenting adults is not mine. However, when you start violating children, that's where I put my flag in the ground. Like, nah, we gonna ride against this because this is not right. Children cannot consent. Children will not consent to any of that foolishness. But what are your thoughts? You may be up to date on all things, everything Sean Diddler Combs. 833-758-1065 is the number to call. If you'd like to just share your thoughts and opinions on this whole trial thing that's going on with Diddy, because I am positive that you are far more knowledgeable about that situation than I am. Far more. And, you know, I'll tell you the other thing, too. It falls in that area of gossip to me, but the celebrity stuff, like when the Shade Room and all these other social media outlets are constantly pumping out the latest about situations like this, it just kind of reminds me of like the housewife type drama that you see on Bravo and whatnot. It's like, come on, man. Come on. So again, if that's your cup of tea, cool. I just don't drink it. That's not my vibe. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville to share your comments and concerns on any of the topics that we discuss here on the show. So let's transition, because I mentioned a moment ago about cars catching fire at the Jacksonville International Airport. I mean, the parking garage was ablaze based on footage that local news media outlets showed. I think upwards of 50 cars were on fire at one time. Wow. Apparently, they're still trying to ascertain the cause of the fire. But make no mistakes about it, that parking garage is going to be closed for a while, meaning parking is going to be at a premium at JIA. I know one of the local news outlets interviewed an engineering professor, and they were speaking about the parking lot and, you know, like what's to be expected with, you know, the damage and all of that good stuff. And it's kind of hard to assess all of that right now. It really is. They won't know for sure what this parking garage, what type of damage has been done to this parking garage until they're able to do a full evaluation of that structure. And that is a thick cement parking garage. But it's not impervious to flames. And I saw another article where one of our councilmen, I believe Matt Carlucci, is believed that his vehicle was in the garage. He's not certain whether it sustained any damage, but man, oh man. I'm sure that was a scary sight to see on Friday. I believe that took place on Friday out there at JIA. So what they're recommending is if you have any travel plans, have someone drop you off at the airport. Because let's keep it a buck. Parking at JIA had been becoming more and more difficult anyway because of all the work they'd been doing out at, for parking specifically, expanding the parking out there at the airport. So it was already challenging finding parking depending upon when you were traveling, time of the week, and all of that good stuff. So now you couple in the fact that this hourly garage parking is going to be out of commission for who knows how long. Look, get you an Uber, a Lyft, put a few dollars in your family member's pocket so they can drop you off at the airport, because it is going to be inconveniencing at best. If you have a habit of running late and you think, oh, well, I'm just going to leave the house and I'll get to the airport, an hour before my flight leaves. But now, let's say you like to live on the dangerous side. I'll get to the airport 30 minutes before my flight leaves. TSA not that bad. I got TSA pre-check. I'll leave the house 30 minutes ahead of time. I'll be okay. I'm telling you, you are going to miss your flight. Now that this parking garage is out of commission, you are going to miss your flight. Do not live on the edge when it comes to time management if you have to catch a flight leaving out of JIA and you have to park. You think you're going to leave the house 30 minutes before, or get to the airport rather, 30 minutes before your flight leaves, park at the airport and still catch your flight? Seriously, don't do it. Don't frustrate yourself like that. Okay? Then next thing we know, you cussing out TSA. Now you on social media going viral because you trying to snatch the flight clerk at the ticketing booth across the desk. You gonna make me late for my flight? No, you made you late for your flight. Because you wanted to live dangerously. You wanted to have big fun, leaving the house all late before getting to the airport, knowing there's parking issues now at JIA, knowing you had intended on leaving your car somewhere so that you can travel to wherever you're traveling to and come back and drive home. No. So we got a plan now heading out to JIA. But hopefully, if you're listening, hopefully if you were traveling this past week, hopefully your car was not caught up in that mess. If your car was caught up in that mess, hopefully you'll be able to get everything situated. Because here's the thing. It's just a car. It can be replaced. Thankfully, because I haven't heard any reports of loss of life at JIA. So I'm going to continue on that trend just because of the different stories where I've consumed my news surrounding this issue or this matter at JIA. There have been no mention whatsoever about loss of life. So if your car was caught up in the parking lot because you were traveling, thankfully you're still here. That car can be replaced. That's what insurance is for. And who knows? I don't know what type of liability coverage Jacksonville International Airport has when it comes to stuff like this, but I'm pretty sure, conversations with them, and I'm sure all that stuff will be worked out in terms of those individuals who left their car in the parking garage. I'm sure JIA has something in place to get that taken care of. But heaven forbid if you've been riding dirty. And you know what I mean by riding dirty. If you ain't got no insurance and you parked your car in that parking garage, got to be more careful. That's all I can say. If you've been riding dirty, meaning your tags are expired, got to be more careful. Hey, this is Front Page Jacksonville. We have more that we're going to bring your way here on the show. And, of course, you can always chime in at 833-758-1065. This is Front Page Jacksonville. More is on the way.
Now Now back to the show that informs you and discusses the issues. Front Page Jacksonville on Hot 106.5.
Some very heartbreaking news coming out of the south side of Jacksonville. Friday night, a father and young son were struck by a vehicle on Bay Meadows Road. And both of them unfortunately passed away there at the scene. I learned this morning that the father was actually a teacher at Bayview Elementary. So I just want to take a moment to send condolences out to their family, because heaven only knows what they're currently going through. The community, based on what I saw in the news outlet where I was reading the article, the community is rallying around that family with support, with love and comfort during this unfortunate time. The educational community is also reaching out to the family as well. So shout out to the principal there at Bayview Elementary and DCPS for showering this family with love during this very difficult time. But the father, whose name is Mitch, and his 1-year-old son, they were leaving a family gathering, crossing the street there on Bay Meadows, and unfortunately was struck by a vehicle. There have been several pedestrian-involved incidents this year where they've unfortunately died due to that encounter. I don't know if it's a matter of not having enough lighting on the streets. I don't know if it's a matter of distracted driving. I don't know if it's a matter of pedestrians simply not being cognizant of what's going on, But there have been quite a few traffic fatalities this year involving pedestrians. Now, on the west side, just a few months ago, Sister Robbie, who was very well known and loved throughout the Jacksonville community, especially amongst the faith-based community, similar thing, out for her morning run and was struck by not one, but 2 vehicles. I think about back in the fall, the Lee High School senior. This is graduation season, and that young lady did not have an opportunity to walk across the stage due to being struck by a vehicle on her way to the bus stop. So my thoughts and prayers goes out to the different families who are recovering from this tragic incident. And I say recover very lightly because there is no time limit on grief. As a matter of fact, during the 7 o'clock hour, our guest in the studio, we'll be talking about trauma and grief and learning to heal from such things. Dr. Shelita McGowan will be my guest here in the studio. So please keep this family lifted up in prayers, as well as those other families who have lost loved ones this past week, because, man, life be lifing. Life definitely be lifing. On a slightly lighter note, have you heard about the 11 inmates who escaped a Louisiana prison? I saw the video. Them boys was getting out of there. You hear me? I mean, they was heading for the hills. I don't know who did not do their one job. Locking the door. I don't know how these gentlemen were able to escape. All 11 of them. It looked like a scene from a cartoon.
I saw the image. You said you don't know how they escaped. You should have seen it because in one of the bathrooms, all they did was unlodge one of the toilets.
Yep.
And they wrote graffiti. They said, "Yo, we're out of here." They said one of the thing right above the exit, because you saw the video, all of them running, right?
Correct, yeah.
So they all squatted through the little hole where the toilet was, said, "Too easy."
Jack,
easy.
Hold on, Jack. Let me get this straight. So they left a bye-bye note, basically.
Yeah, they said they had enough time to leave a note. They probably made their beds before they left. I mean, too easy, they said.
I'm going to tell you something, man. This new generation, not necessarily the smartest bunch of criminals. So many people tell on themselves because of social media. But how do you leave a bye-bye note in the daggone jail cell?
Here we go.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on.
They're running circles around them, man.
Too easy, LOL. Nah. Look. All 11 of you deserve to get caught. Now they've captured 2 already. They've captured 2 of them already. So there are 9 still on the loose. Have you ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption? You've never seen Jack?
I'm not.
Jack, that is a brilliant movie. It came out back in the 90s. That is one of my favorite movies. I think you would enjoy Shawshank Redemption, especially on the heels of this story of these 11
Morgan
inmates.
Freeman, okay.
Oh, yeah. Look, man, that film, for years I would hear people talking about it, and admittedly, when the film first came out back in the 90s, I thought it was a film about the Holocaust or something like that. And I just so happened to one day see the movie on accident, not realizing it was Shawshank Redemption. It is one of my favorite films. You will do yourself a huge favor, sir,
I'm gonna have to
by
tap
watching
into
that film.
for real.
Tap in, indeed. They were trying to channel Shawshank Redemption. It didn't work out. It did not work out. Yeah, but 2 have been captured. And I was looking at the charges that some of the gentlemen received previously in terms of what led to them being incarcerated. And I don't know what the penalty is for trying to escape or successfully escaping, but I would have to imagine whatever time they had originally, it's about to be compounded. It's about to be compounded. So I hope it was worth it. But, yeah, they're going to have some more time added on to their sentencing. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville. I am your host, Octavius, the $1 Million Voice Davis. Glad to be with you on this Sunday morning. The oven hasn't turned on yet. I don't know what the temperature is outside just yet, but I think it's supposed to get up to 96 degrees. And it's been a scorcher all week already. Let me take a quick look. What are we looking at? 73. So it's still humane out there right now. So if you're getting ready for church, if you're going out doing your morning run or what have you, this is the time to go ahead and get that done. When that oven gets turned on later on today, you go out there and try to run around if you want to, talking about getting some exercise. No. Exercise time is over. You missed your window. You have to get out there later on this evening once that sun turns off, when they turn the oven off, because it has been unusually hot this past week. And I truly believe that we are in store for an unusually hot summer as well, because that's the thing. Summer hasn't even kicked off yet. We're still in spring. We're still in spring, and the sun is already in supernova mode. So just want to give you a heads up. If you're going to get out there, be responsible about it. Be safe about it. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to get on Front Page Jacksonville. I was a little disappointed when I came across this next story. Bahama Breeze is closing 1/3 of their stores across the country. Bahama Breeze has some really good eats. But I'm going to tell you what put the smile back on my face. They're not closing the one at the St. John's Town Center. That one is going to still be open. So May 21st will be me and my wife's 14th year wedding anniversary. I don't even know if I said that sentence correctly, but our 14th wedding anniversary. Thank you, sir. Round of applause. Thank you, Jack. Thank you very much. So I proposed to my wife at Bahama Breeze February of 2011. And we got married, of course, May 21st, 2011. But the reception dinner, Bahama Breeze. Went right to Bahama Breeze. And look, the way that we did our wedding, we knew off rip, hey, look, we're not about to spend a whole lot of money. saying I do, and we definitely not about to spend a whole lot of money feeding people, okay? So here's how we did our wedding. We got married on the beach. My wife loves the beach, all right? So we got married on the beach. We went to the Justice of the Peace to get our wedding license and all of that good stuff. But the godparents of our children, they're pastors here in town. Shout out to Leo and Norma Davis. And so they did our ceremony right there on the beach. We were joined by family and friends, made a nice little love circle around us. And when that thing was over, it was BYOB at Bahama Breeze. Hey, look, you're welcome to come if you like, but just know you're responsible for your own bill. And here we are 14 years later. Yes, challenges have come our way. Challenges continue coming our way because that's the nature of love and relationships. But let me tell you what didn't happen. We didn't go into debt getting married. No, we're not going to do that because some people allow themselves to get caught up in the fanfare of it all. They want a wedding. They don't want a marriage. There is a difference. You can spend $20,000 on a wedding and be bankrupt in terms of a marriage. Nah, we didn't want to do that. So I say all that to say I'm excited to know that Bahama Breeze at the St. John's Town Center is still there. And I think I've shared with you before, I am a creature of habit. I am going to get the same thing every time I go to Bahama Breeze. Yes, I want a menu because I want to make sure that what I'm going to order is still on the menu. I'm not looking at the menu because I'm curious about something different. No. My taste buds and my expectations, I like going into it knowing what to expect. I'm going to get the grilled chicken, I'm going to get the broccoli, and I'm going to get that sweet potato. That's what I'm going to get. My wife, she's getting the empanadas, and she's getting a Caesar salad. She's a creature of habit, too. Her palate is probably a little bit more refined than my own, right? But we can continue. The festivities can continue at Bahama Breeze at the St. John's Town Center. And then before we head over into the next hour, yesterday, the city of Jacksonville, the Ritz Theater, and Councilwoman Jacoby Pittman hosted an Emancipation Day celebration at Lift Every Voice and Sing Park. I learned something new this morning when I was reading this story because I didn't realize that Florida had its Emancipation Day on May 20th. And I'll share with you what I mean. Emancipation was proclaimed in Tallahassee on May 20th of 1865, just 11 days after the end of the Civil War, and 2 years after the proclamation was first issued by President Abraham Lincoln to free the slaves in the southern states. So on May 20th, Union General Edward McCook read Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation to end slavery in the state of Florida. Slavery ended in the state of Florida on May 20th of 1865. Juneteenth, which we're all familiar with, which I'm familiar with, June 19th is when Texas was made aware. Is when Texas heard the proclamation of emancipation. And so I'm curious. I know we celebrate Juneteenth, but in Florida, why isn't May 20th our holiday? That's when emancipation happened here. It's like you would think that because each state heard differently when slavery had come to an end. It wasn't one broad stroke that, hey, all right, Lincoln has freed the slaves. Everybody's free because there was no social media back then. There was no news back then. Because let's keep it a buck. 2 years after the proclamation was first issued, there was a 2-year delay. Maybe their Wi-Fi was acting up from the White House to the different states in the Union. I don't know. But there was a 2-year delay from when Lincoln freed the slaves and when slaves actually became free. So here in the state of Florida, May 20th, I believe that's Tuesday. May 20th is our anniversary in the state of Florida for Emancipation Day. And so that's what the city was celebrating at Lift Every Voice and Sing Park. The Cats Downstairs was out there doing what they do. If you've ever heard the band The Cats Downstairs perform live, they are sensational. They do their thing. And I want to give a shout out to the mistress of ceremonies at yesterday's event, Carol J. Alexander. I want to give Miss Alexander her roses on this good Sunday morning because she used to be the executive director of the Ritz Theater and has been involved in so many richly historic African-American things that have transpired in this city. And she planted a seed in my heart many years ago when she used to host Amateur Night at the Ritz Theater. I remember I went to one of the shows at the Ritz Theater. This is probably back in 2007, 2008, somewhere up in there. And I saw how she commanded the audience as she navigated that stage. And I said, yo, I want to do that one day. Lo and behold, in 2013 is when I became the host of Amateur Night at the Ritz. And I would always give homage to her on stage at the Ritz Theater, and I'll continue to do so today because, Miss Alexander, you are the one who inspired me to attempt to follow in your footsteps. I'm going to let you know right now. I did my best when I was on that stage to follow in your footsteps, but my feet were still too small, Miss Alexander, because you left some very big shoes to fill, and I hope I did you proud during my time there at the Ritz Theater and Museum. Stick around. We have Dr. Shelita McGowan here in the studio with us this morning. We're going to talk about her story of triumphing over trauma. 833-758-1065. That's the number to call. This is Front Page Jacksonville. We'll be back in a moment.
The heartbeat of the community. Front Page Jacksonville returns on High 106.5.
You have heard and seen the TV commercials. If you've been in an accident, call us. We got your back. And I have, one of the McGowans here in the studio with me this morning, Dr. Shelita McGowan. Welcome to Front Page Jacksonville.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We're going to have you bring that mic right up to you. There you go. There you go. Talk right into you. You got it.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure having you. Been looking forward to getting you here on Front Page Jacksonville. So last month, you were at the Think Bold conference.
Yes.
And I had an opportunity to be in the room, and I heard just a portion of your story. I was like, whoa, I got to get her on Front Page Jacksonville. So we're going to have an opportunity to get to that in just a moment.
Okay.
But before we do, as I mentioned at the open, we're all familiar with McGowan Chiropractic right here in Jacksonville. And if you're not familiar with McGowan Chiropractic, get yourself familiar by going ahead and scheduling to get an appointment to get an adjustment, right? But how did you get into chiropractic therapy? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. I need to go back 20 plus years.
Okay.
So I went to Grambling State University.
Okay.
That is an HBCU in Louisiana. And I was majoring in biology pre-med. And I was trying to figure out what route I wanted to go. And we had a speaker come in from Life Chiropractic School in Atlanta.
Okay.
And it piqued my interest. I still wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do, but what happened was I was in an accident and I started to develop headaches, and that was in college.
Automobile accident?
Well, it was not necessarily.
Okay.
You know, I was a college kid, and so I was riding on the hood of a car.
Oh, my goodness. Well, a car was involved.
A car was involved. And I fell off the moving car.
Wow.
So, yeah. And then I ended up suffering from headaches, and I had some neck damage. And so the chiropractor in Grambling actually helped my neck and stopped my headaches. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is a field I want to go into. And I went into, and the rest was history. So I graduated from Grambling State in biology pre-med, and then I went to Life University in Atlanta, and that took 4.5 years for that degree. So I had a 4-year college degree, and it takes 4.5 years to finish chiropractic school.
Well, I didn't know that you were an HBCU alum as well.
Yes.
I love the HBCU greatness. Absolutely love it. Now, are you from Louisiana?
I'm from New Orleans. Yes.
Okay. So were you familiar with the story with the inmates?
Yeah, that's why I was giggling.
Them were none of your people.
No. But me and my brothers, we have been clowning about the story.
Have you really?
Yeah, back and forth through text. Yes.
So graduated from GSU, went on to finish up with school there in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And what brought you to Jacksonville?
Royce, my husband. So I graduated in September of 2003. And I was married by November of 2003.
Wow, so pretty quick.
So we dated for approximately, I think it was like a year and a half, and then we got married, and I moved. So I graduated in September, went home for a month, and I was in Jacksonville within 30 days. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the rest has been history. So this is home now.
It's home for you now, and you and your husband have built a very recognizable practice right here in the heart of the Jacksonville community. How has McGowan Spinal Rehabilitation Center been coming along for you all?
It's good. I mean, I love it. I remember when we first started, I was looking for a job. So I would go to different chiropractors' offices and apply for a job. Some would hire me, some would not. And so there was this one. Well, I worked for 2 different offices, and sometimes it would be, I would get questions about like what's going on, where your husband is working, this, that, and the other. And it wasn't like mean questions. They weren't out of place, but it just made me uncomfortable. So it was just like an opportunity to say, well, this isn't comfortable for me. I had a baby at the time, and it was kind of like trying to maneuver a newborn, trying to work these long hours, because sometimes I wouldn't get home till like 8 p.m. And I just had to pivot. And so I pivot for multiple reasons. And so I just stopped. And so then when I tried to get back out there and say, okay, well, let me go and apply here, apply there, it just never worked out, or it was always the questions, because we were kind of looked at as the competition.
Sure.
And so when I was looked at as the competition, because my husband was in the field, now I'm in the field, and it made it a little bit more challenging for me to land a job without all the prerequisite questions that I would get. And so I told Royce, I was like, I'm either going to change careers or we're going to start our own practice. And he said, well, let's do it. And so I said, I'm just going to start a clinic. I don't know where we're going to go, what we're going to do. And I would ride around with my daughter, who's now 19, and we would ride around and we would visit these, go to these real estate properties and try to see, okay, is this the office? Is this the office? Is this the office? And I landed on one office that was actually right across from her pediatrician's office. When I tell you that office was probably this big, I had no vision. I was like, I want to get planted somewhere. Yeah. And it had a patient waiting area, the front desk, 3 small rooms and a bathroom. Yeah. That was it. And
what side of town was this?
It was South Side. It was directly across from Memorial Hospital. And so I would go, and I was like, Royce, I found a spot. And when he saw it, I brought him to see it. He was just like, oh, okay. It was real tiny. And I just was like, I'm going to start it. I'm going to start it. And he was still working where he was working. And over time, the clientele just continued to build. Yeah. And Kennedy, which is my daughter, she would be in the lobby. So I didn't have anywhere to put her. I couldn't put her in daycare because I was just that helicopter mom, right? Sure. So she would stay in the lobby talking to the patients, and then it just got to the point where it just started growing, and my lobby would get full, and then I only had 3 rooms, and it was just me. Yeah. I just had a baby. I was losing so much weight because chiropractic is like a workout. So you're adjusting people. You're constantly, it's a very physical job. And I just remember one day, Royce called me from his lunch break, and he said, "Yeah, I just quit my job." I was like, "What?"
So there was no conversation.
There was
prior.
no conversation prior. I was like, "You did what? Like, what did you just do?" And he said, I just quit my job." And he said that there's no need to build somewhere else when we can build together.
Yeah.
And that was a real turning point from us. He didn't leave that job like that day, but within the respectful amount of time, he was over there with us. But he had let me know that that was done.
Got it. See,
yeah, but he didn't walk out. No, he didn't. He didn't do that. No, that's not his character. He did the honorable way. He left the job respectfully, and he and the guy are in a good position. So it wasn't anything like that. It just was. When he told me, I wasn't prepared for that because that's our health insurance. That's the money. That's everything. And I'm like,
your safety net.
Yeah, it's like, well, we have a baby. What are we doing? So that was pretty hard. And but it was I was in that practice alone for about 6 months before he quit where he was. And I wasn't expecting it. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working by myself. It was kind of... when I would go out to market, because we both had to market. So, and then we both had to market in the same pool. One is working somewhere else, and then I have my own. So it's like, where do you go if you're both, you're both competing for the same
business, basically.
And you're the same person, really. Yeah. So it made sense. It made sense in the end for us to work together.
And I think the community is benefiting tremendously from that decision that the two of you have made to work together with building the McGowan brand, the McGowan business here in our community. I'm a client there, and so now you're on Main Street.
Yes.
Did the two of you make a conscious decision to plant your newer office in the heart of an area that's predominantly African American to service that community?
Yes. So So Royce was working on the north side when I had the clinic across from Memorial Hospital. And then we ended up purchasing another building that was on Brentwood. So it was at the split of Brentwood and Gulf Fair. So right where that split goes before you get to Gateway. That's also our building.
The Pepper Pot used to be in that area by the Pepper Pot restaurant?
It's by Kip School. If you keep going down.
Yep, I know exactly what you mean.
So we have a building right there too. It sits on the corner of... Right at that fork where you can curve or go that way.
Yes.
And so our practice was there. So we stayed there for about 8 years, and then we were outgrowing that place, and so that's when we purchased the other building. But the goal was to stay where we were, stay in the north side, because we wanted to provide quality care to the patients in that community, because it wasn't a lot of places for them to go in that area. And then sometimes people, they don't really like that area. It's not an ideal area for some people. And when I say God has blessed us to be in that area and to take care of the community in that area, I can't see a better location for us. So it's been great.
And I can tell you what it's done for me as a client of your chiropractic practice. Prior to, I'm gonna keep it honest, I never saw chiropractics as being something that Black people go to. I was like, I'll go too far. I'll just crack my neck and I'll keep on going. But it's been through me as a client, but then of course I've had an opportunity to work with your husband throughout the years. So I've been learning from afar, and I'm like, I love how the McGowans have made chiropractic medicine a norm within the African American community.
It is a stigma in the African American community because they're like, oh, you're gonna break my neck. Oh, you're gonna do this. Oh, you're gonna do
now look, Doc be popping now. Hey, I'll be hearing some stuff crack when Doc be getting me in there.
But it really does alleviate the symptoms, and you just have to go through the process. And I think once the patients establish that trust and they know that, oh, wow, it really does fix my headache. Oh, it really does take away the neck pain. It really does take away that sciatica, that pain that's going down the leg. And you don't have to do it with drugs or surgery.
Yeah.
So drugs and surgery are not obsolete, but if there's a way to do it without that, that's where we come in. And sometimes patients have reached their last, they were like, hey, somebody told me to come to y'all because I've been having this pain going down my leg for 3 years, and the doctor is saying, oh, I should have surgery. So my friend said, go to Dr. McGowan. And next thing you know, they're walking upright. Their back is in better alignment. Yeah. There's no more leg numbness. There's no more numbness and tingling. There's no more pain when they sleep. And when they do have like a little bit of a catch, they'll come in and get like a monthly checkup, and then they're good to go. They're back playing golf. They're back picking up their kids. They're back doing the things that they wanted to do prior to having that back pain. But it just takes taking that first step and making that appointment. So if you have the back pain, because we don't just deal with car accidents.
Correct. Yep.
We deal with patients who have neck pain, who have chronic back pain, who have the pain going down the leg, who have the pain going down the arms, and we can help fix all of that.
It was maybe 10 years ago. My wife had a chiropractic appointment, not at your practice. It was on a different part of town at that time. It's the craziest thing. So my wife used to be a hairstylist. And so standing behind that chair all day, she would shift her weight, right? And so she would occasionally start walking with this limp. And so we go to the chiropractor. It was the strangest thing. I can understand why in the Bible, when you read certain stories, you're like, nah, that ain't true. That ain't really happened. But listen to me when I tell you, this actually happened. So the chiropractor, because my wife was sharing with him about the limp that she was walking with and the pain in her hip, and he had her lay on the table and he showed her legs. Like her legs were like uneven.
Different length.
Yeah. And so he did this wada bam bing.
And the legs became even.
The legs became even. So explain that to. I'm just a guy. I'm not very knowledgeable. So was that Jesus that was working on my wife? How did he grow her leg in that moment?
He had to manipulate the joint, the pelvic bone. Okay. So what happens is if your pelvis sits like right here, these are your hips. If you put your hands on your hip, that's your hip. If you're constantly shifting because of pain, one is going to rotate up or down, and it's going to cause the leg to be long. It just depends on what side the pain is. That leg is going to be longer or shorter. You look at the legs and you try to see where you can find the pain. You palpate, and that's feel around on the low back, and you look for, there's different cues that we have that we can feel in the body that most people don't know what we're looking for, but you can feel when the joint is off. It doesn't matter your weight. It doesn't matter you can be skinny or not skinny. And we can still feel the difference in the muscle tissue underneath. And so what that does is it just tells us how to align that hip based off of the leg length. And we can press and do what we have to do and manipulate. And then that joint, it goes. So when we do that, once we find it, we know how to. Wow. It's almost like a
Rubik's Cube.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, the Rubik's. I'm doing my hands. I'm like, it's like a Rubik's Cube. So you take it and you flip it back into place. And so and most of the times the patients, they hear the clunk. Yeah. They'll feel the drop when their pelvis realigns. And that right there is like that aha moment, and it's like magic. And you're like, and then you start walking better, and then you come in over time, like you'll get maybe a few of those. It depends on how bad or how, it just depends on the case, per case. Everybody's different. Sure. So it just depends on the timing of how much time you'll need to kind of keep that to lock in place, to settle. And then we teach you how to control that at home as well, and different work techniques that you can do at home as far as standing, lifting, different things. And so we try to show our patients, we don't just fix you so you can keep coming. We try to educate you so that you can take care of some things at home on your own. So when you feel that flare, you know what to do through education and stuff like that we've taught you over time. But it does realign those legs, and it does lock them back into place. See, because the muscle is off, and it takes it and it pulls it. So it's a lot of muscle manipulation there.
I knew it was Jesus magic. I knew it. You're listening to Front Page Jacksonville. I'm your host, Octavius Davis. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Dr. Shelita McGowan of, McGowan Chiropractic Spinal Rehabilitation Center. And so, Dr. McGowan, I mentioned during the first part of the interview how I had an opportunity to hear a portion of your story at the Think Bold conference last month. And the listeners may not be familiar with your story. So let's transition, because we've had an opportunity to hear about you professionally. But let's talk a little bit about your story personally. Take us to that story that you were sharing at the Think Bold conference. What happened?
With the
home
invasion robbery.
Yes.
So this was back in 2008. I was working at the office across from Memorial Hospital, and by that time we had purchased the office on Brentwood. So Royce was at the clinic in Brentwood, and I was at Memorial Hospital. At the office across from Memorial Hospital. So on that particular day, I went into work for, maybe 2 hours, and then I left to go get my daughter from home.
Okay.
She was at home with my mom. And I had to bring her back to the clinic so that I can bring her to a pediatric appointment. And so what happened was, when I left, I ended up making several turns. Like I ended up going to a lawyer's office. I had to drop off some paperwork. That whole morning was just off.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't doing my normal stuff. Usually I'm not in the clinic. I don't leave the clinic. My daughter would have came with me. I would not have, she would have been with me. If I knew she had an appointment at 10, you would have came with me at 7 a.m. And so I ended up making a drive to an attorney's office, dropped that off. Then I went home on the phone with my cousin, just yapping. It's a normal day. We had just got back from a cruise. And so when I came in, I parked my car in the driveway. The garage at the time was in the back of the house. I never not park in the garage. So that was different. This is hindsight. I wasn't thinking that as it was happening. This is just, I'm just giving you like where we are now. So to kind of connect the two. But I parked in the driveway, went in through the front door. I never do that. Went straight to the bathroom. I didn't even say, "Mom, I'm here to get Kennedy." I didn't yell anything because I was on the phone. And all of a sudden, I'm using the bathroom and I hear this loud boom. Like, you would have thought a bomb went off. And I heard my mom screaming. And all I could hear was screaming. She was screaming. I'm not talking about screaming like, I'm talking about just screaming. And the first thing I thought with the noise was something happened to my baby. Like furniture fell or something. Because the way she was screaming, you knew something was wrong. And I jumped off the toilet, and I was still trying to, I don't know how Tiffany got off the phone. That's my cousin. How I got off, I don't know what happened. The phone was still, I don't even know where the phone was. I wasn't even thinking about the phone. And I was running, and I was trying to pull my panties and my scrub bottoms up as I was running out of the bathroom. And then when I turned the corner, I met a guy he was in my den, and I was coming out the hallway out of my master bedroom, and he put a gun to my forehead. So as soon as I turned the corner, I'm looking down, I'm running, trying not to trip, trying to pull up my underwear, trying to pull up my scrub bottoms. And as soon as I turned, bam. And he slapped it so hard to my head, my scrubs and my panties just stayed down. I couldn't even pull them up. So, because, scrubs are loose anyway. They weren't, so everything was just at my ankles. And he flipped me around and put me like in this chokehold, and he put the gun to my temporal, and he just started dragging me around the house. Wow. And then when he was dragging me around the house, I couldn't see where Kennedy was, but I could hear my mom. And all I remember was just dragging him when he was pulling on my hair. It was just like my feet, I could feel like my feet, how your feet are like, your feet are dragging. So I'm on a slant, so I'm trying to hold him to keep him from choking me. And then as he's pulling me, my feet are dragging, my panties and my scrubs are at my ankles, and he's just dragging me around the house like a rag doll with still the gun to my temporal the whole time.
Was he communicating anything during that?
He was telling me
moment?
to shut the F up. That's what he kept telling me. He was just like, shut up. He just kept saying shut up, and a lot of curse words. I was called everything but my name that day. And then he drugged me into the kitchen, And he was like, I don't know how my mom and my daughter got in the kitchen. We were all in the kitchen. And he still had me in a chokehold. And by that time, he had hit me on my head. So I had like blood like on the side of my face. And I don't remember how he hit me. It just was a lot happening at one time. And he was like, shut up before, he told my mom to make my baby shut up before I popped the baby. That's what he said. And I remember telling my mom, just make her be quiet. Just make her be quiet. And when I tell you, like, the tears, the snot, the everything were just, like, it was so much. It was just dripping off his arm. That's how, like, he had me, like, in a chokehold. And it was just, like, I could see it, like, running down. And then he started asking for money. And so when he pulled us out of the kitchen, that's when I saw 2 more guys in my home. And so it was 3 armed men with no mask. And it was 9 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So that wasn't expected. It wasn't expected to, no mask. You know, just a lot of different things just were happening at one time. And then they ended up, he ended up getting a safe. The other guy, one guy was just like looking for money. I need money. I was like, my purse is right there. He didn't want my purse. He didn't want my purse. He didn't want that. So he just was asking for money. And then I'm like, I don't have any money. And then I just thought about it. And I said, well, my husband has a safe. And that's what I said. I didn't know. And when I tell you, Octavius, I didn't know the code. I would have had to call Royce and ask him what the code, because I didn't. I knew it was there, but I didn't need to know the code. I didn't need to know the code right then. But I was like, I knew where it was, and I told him where it was, and the guy came and he picked it up. The guy who was in the linen closet, and there was another guy standing watch in the foyer. So the 2 were in the bedroom with me now. So they were in Royce's closet, and he ended up getting a safe. And then he asked what was that, and that was a gun box. And so they took the gun box too. So they took the safe and the gun box. He picked it up, and mind you, like, when he's bending down picking that up, my body part is still exposed. Sure. So he's like down there, and we're at the same level basically, and with my body and with his head, it was just a lot going on, like, emotionally. And I just was like, what are they finna do? Like, it was I had no control. And I am a concealed weapon carrier. I can carry a gun. I had a gun, but I got 3 men. What I'm gonna do? Right. What am I gonna do? And you have I'm looking at the gun box. I could see a gun on the mantle, which was, high, because my daughter was real little at the time. And it was nothing I could do. I couldn't do anything. And so as he drugged me out of the house, the guy picked up the safes, and he actually ran out the house. And then the other guy who had the gun to my head, he just started like pressing the gun into my head. It was almost like a constant like stop. And so all this was just like so bruised up. And I still have migraines, and they only come on that side now because of the way that he was hitting my head on that side with the gun, the amount of force. So I suffer from chronic migraines. But when he did that, when he turned me around, I started to pray for him. So
audibly or within? Audibly.
So it was like something came through my house, like a wind. And I know it sounds like what is she talking about? But when I watch a lot of scary movies, and you know how they talk about death, or they talk about, and it's this coldness that comes through, and it's like a wind or something. And the wind came through my house and in my bedroom, and it said, lay hands on him and pray for him. Wow. And I was like, I'm still crying. And this is, when I tell you this is all happening so fast, like your brain, that's when I realized how fast a brain can work. Like, I know we humans haven't even touched what the brain can do, right? Agreed. So when that was happening, it came again, but the voice was louder. And it said, lay hands on him and pray for him. And so I took this hand, because I was able to free it, and I put my hand up under his shirt, and I began to stroke his back. And I said, Lord, forgive him. I said, because he doesn't know what he's doing. And he was like, shut up, B. Shut up. You ain't got to pray for me. You don't have to pray for me. And I just kept rubbing his back. It was almost like trying to calm something, like a wild animal. And he's not an animal, but I'm saying like just trying to calm.
Soothing him.
Yeah, and it was just, and I just kept praying for him. And I just remember asking God to forgive him. I don't even remember asking God to save my life. I don't remember asking God to save my daughter's life. I just asked God to forgive him. And I kept saying that over and over and over again. And he was like, he was starting to tremble. I could feel like the gun was getting looser off of my head. And I just continued to pray for him. I just continued to pray for him. And he was, and even in court, he was saying he remembered all of that.
Yeah.
And I just remember, I just kept praying for him. He dragged me around the house. We came back into the den, and I saw my mom and my daughter laying on the floor in front of a coffee table. And my mom was covering, and the guy was standing in the foyer. He was still there. But the guy who had the gun to my head, he was like, where are the phones at? Where are the phones? And at that time, we had house phones. And so he took the house phone, he pulled it from the wall, and we had marble floors, and he threw it on the floor, and the phone just shattered. And he was like, where's the other phones? And I was just like, that's it. I didn't know, because, you're not thinking. I'm not, that's what I see. That's what we have. He threw it on the floor. Then he went back to the guy at the foyer, standing at the foyer. And I was still stroking his back. And the guy just was like, he motioned to like, let's go. And he was like, we're not gonna kill her. Like, it was like, and so we went into the living room, and he took my head and tried to bash it into the coffee table. And it was a glass table, and all of this just was like, he just slammed my face into the table. And then the table didn't break, nothing in my face, but it was all like bruised up. Sure. And it was just like, it was just pretty bad. And so even now I have like my smile is crooked. So it's like it left like some type of nerve damage, but not like something that I could fix. So it pulls like a little twitch to the left for my face. And so it's like, so when you slam my face, you just went, and then, I already like hit my head and all this stuff. So it's just something that I just live with after that. But they ran out and ended up calling the police. I called Royce. I would have thought he flew there as fast as he got there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, him and the police, they all were pulling up at the same time. And I'm like, I just got off the phone. Like, and I made sure my baby was okay. And it was a lot. They had helicopters out. They had Sheriff Rutherford, I think was the sheriff at the time.
At the time, yeah.
And it was a lot.
That being an extremely traumatic experience that you and your family went through. When we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about how you were able to navigate that trauma, because unfortunately that wasn't the only type of traumatic experience you had. You're listening to Front Page Jacksonville. My guest this morning is Dr. Shelita McGowan, sharing with us a traumatic experience that she and her family went through. But on the other side of the break, she's going to share with us how she and her family have grown through the trauma. Stick around. More is on the way.
Front Page Jacksonville resumes on Hot 106.5.
If you're just tuning in, we are listening to an amazing story of survival, of triumph, and faith from a well-known business owner right here in our very own community, Dr. Shelita McGowan of McGowan Spinal Rehabilitation Center. And Dr. McGowan, you just shared you gave us a full account of what took place.
Yes.
During that home invasion that you, your mom, and your daughter, how old was Kennedy at the time?
She had just turned 7 days
prior. Wow. And so many different things transpired. Thankfully, none of you lost your lives in that
Yes.
situation. Before the break, you shared that your husband, Royce McGowan, got there, and the detectives, they got there seemingly at the same time. During the break, you did share that all three gentlemen were apprehended.
Yes.
Share with the audience what happened in that situation with them being apprehended.
So they were all caught. So what happened, we actually had cameras on our house. The cameras were being installed at our Brentwood office. And before we went on a cruise, we had the office like surveillance, put the CCTVs up in so that you can see everything. And we had 2 cameras left. And the camera crew said, "What do you want to do with those cameras?" And we said, "Well, let's put them at the house."
Yeah.
The cameras hadn't been up at the house 7 days before the robbery happened. So when the robbery happened, everything was caught on video at the front door. And it was only because those cameras had been up maybe 5 days. That's the only way. And so you could see me parking. You could see the car that they were in going by. You could see when the guy came to kick the door in, you could see him cocking the gun and putting a bullet in the chamber. Like you could see him and then as soon as he do that, he then kicks the door in. And you can see, and you can hear it. It has sound. I could hear the screams. You can hear the conversations. You can hear the yelling. Everything was caught on video. So video and audio. Yeah. So it was no question of what happened in the house because you could see and hear it. Yeah. You just couldn't see what was happening inside, but you could hear what was happening inside. And that was played at court. And so we ended up catching the detectives ended up catching the guys. It took a little while for them to catch them. But it was actually through an anonymous phone call that we caught them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so during the trial, what was the outcome?
They were tried separately, and they were given life in prison.
All 3 gentlemen?
Mm-hmm. Well, 2.
2, okay.
2. And one guy, he was used in another case, and they did something with his sentencing.
Okay.
I didn't go to his stuff. He helped the city. I don't know what he did. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know the logistics of that, but I know his was different.
Okay.
But the other 2 had life in prison. And the one that had the gun to my head, I just learned from the district state attorney's office that he recently passed. Yeah.
Wow. Now, this is someone whom inflicted a lot of terror and trauma upon your family.
Yeah.
But you shared that during that altercation, you actually began praying for him in that moment.
I did.
And so let's now talk about you and your family, the path of healing. A situation like that, I can't even begin to imagine what one would do. So how did healing begin and occur for you and your family?
Well, that's a good question because the healing, every time I would try to heal or think I'm healing, another event would happen. So I learned probably a month after the robbery that I was pregnant, and I was actually losing I miscarried. I was pregnant during the home invasion and I didn't know it, and I ended up losing that baby. And then so that was a hard hit. I went on to get pregnant again and again and again. During the trial, I was pregnant. The stress caused me to miscarry that baby. I went to the Dr. Phil show, and we flew to California. All the things everything was just very, very nice. Right before we go on set, I start hemorrhaging. The taping of the Dr. Phil show, I was actually actively having a miscarriage.
Wow.
Sitting on the stage, telling my story, Dr. Phil knew. He was so nice. He was like, "We don't have to do this. Like, go, I need you to go to Mount Sinai. I need you to do this." And I was like, "No, I'm fine." And he was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, I'm fine, because I knew I wanted to tell my story.
Yeah.
But at that time, I felt like I was numb too. like, because it has started a series of miscarriages, and that's how I knew what it was. And when I got back home and to my doctor, she was crying, because she was like, she hated it for me, but it was like it was nothing that we could do because the trauma had set so deeply in my body, and my body was so stressed internally that it just was rejecting. Every time I would get pregnant, it was just like, nope, too much stress. And even though trying to do therapy and trying to do this and that, when you keep getting hit with a loss.
Right. And so let's connect the dots for the audience very quickly, because you just shared that you experienced several miscarriages. Mm-hmm. And you're stating that those several miscarriages are a result of the trauma.
Yes.
You went through with the home invasion.
Yes.
But your body
kept score.
Mm-hmm.
My body, yes. My body had not released what I was going through. So the chronic headaches, the chronic fatigue, the miscarriages, the stress that I was feeling, the panic attacks that I was having, all of that was in relation to what I had been through. And some of those I didn't connect the dots till later on. And when I started to do therapy and some inner work and just self-reflection and just talking, because I went through several bouts of therapy to try to figure out what was happening. And some of the therapies work, and then it was just this one particular event and this therapist, we finally made a connection. And it was like, oh... And it was like a light bulb went off, and then everything just started to line up and make sense. And then you start to process stuff from the past, and it's like, oh, I was feeling that, and that's why I felt that in my body. That's where that pit in my stomach comes from when I smell certain things, or I see certain things, or it's certain things now that I can't look at. It's certain movies that I can't look at. It's certain smells I don't like to be in large crowds. I'll go, but a lot of times I'll leave before the ending. Yeah. You know, sometimes I'll show up late because I don't like to walk in that hurdled, that kind of packed setting. And because it triggers something. Because if I can't tell crying from laughing, I have a panic attack. And that's even now. So if I can't tell, because some people scream when they're laughing, they're like, ah! And if I can't make the difference between the crying and the laughing, it triggers something in me, because the noise that my mom gave, the noise that my daughter, it's like it all just triggers. Yeah. So the steps of healing, we had to really talk about it. We had to really, I had to talk to Royce about it. I had to make sure my daughter was okay. I had to make sure, you're 3, but what do you remember? are you okay? So and Royce, he's the head of the house. I'm making sure yeah, you're okay. And that's just as a woman, a nurturer, are you okay because you weren't there? I don't want you to feel guilty because you weren't home. Right, and now there's nothing you could have done differently if you were there. So I didn't want him to feel any guilt. I didn't want my daughter to have any repercussions or memory issues. I didn't want my mom. So I started going into this protect mode of them, and I was forgetting about myself. And they were all like, we're fine. And then I just noticed how I would react in certain situations and with certain people, and with it just, when I noticed that I didn't want to see patients anymore for a while, I was like, okay, I really got to get some help, because I didn't know everybody. I was fearful of everyone because I didn't know who knew what. The trial was still going on. And so over years, I just went through therapy. And I heard you say earlier that grief has no time limit. Neither does trauma. Mm-hmm. But and it doesn't, there's no proposed time. You're supposed to be over this in 3 months. You're supposed to be over this in 6 months. That's not how it works. Yeah. So it's just, it's a process. And sometimes we don't have anyone to talk to. We don't know who to talk to. Sometimes you don't want to go to your friend because you don't want to tell your friend your business. And that's where finding that trusted source comes in, because you gotta let it out. You got to have somebody to talk to. And it's one thing, even for me, I went through journaling. I use a weighted blanket. I've done, I'm now a trauma coach myself.
Yeah.
And
we're going to dive into that.
Yeah. And it's a very hard place to be in, because when you have went through so much, it becomes like you don't want to become numb. And sometimes people become so numb that they stop living. And they don't even realize that they stopped living from that trauma that happened 5 years ago. They're not the same person, and they may be fluid, functioning in front of everybody, and laughing and joking. But when they go home, pain is there. It's still that loneliness, and that's why I understand that saying now, where people say you can be still lonely and surrounded by a lot of people.
Yeah.
And because it's still that something inside that you don't know where to put it. You don't know how to get it out. You got 10,000 people around you, but you're lonely.
Yeah.
Because you don't have an outlet.
And I know everyone's different. Everyone's body responds to trauma differently.
Yes.
Right. And so you shared with us just what that process of healing looked like for you and your family, a little of what that journey looked like for you and your family. But you also mentioned that you're now a trauma coach. Talk to us about what is a trauma coach and how do you help people with their trauma? So
a trauma coach is different from being a mental health therapist. So it's a process that I went through for 2 years of training. And what you do is you learn how to help people move forward from traumatic experiences. I don't want you to relive the trauma. I want to get you out of that place so that you can move forward with your life. It's a lot of people right now who won't start a business, who won't try a new relationship, who won't try to have another baby, because that fear and that trauma is there because they're fearful.
Right.
And and it's something in their mind that's telling them no, no, no. And so as a trauma coach, I talk to you and I get you to process it out loud. And then we talk it through, and you ultimately come up with your own plan. I don't project my plan onto you. I don't say, Octavius, you should be doing this. I let you talk it through with me. And then while you're talking, over time, you start to have those aha moments. I'm like, oh, I can do that. That is an obtainable goal. That is so it's to pull you out of your own head and to get you to do forward thinking and to change those neural pathways that keep telling you got to stay in this place. Because I was in that place for 14 years. Yeah. And that's a long time to be in a place where you're still going through life. But what all did you miss during that 14 years? Oh, that's powerful. It's a lot that I can look back on, and I can look at pictures and I can see, I probably had something on my mind that day, or because I can see it now. Yeah. And before, and even though smiling, you still know, it was something going on. So it's really good. I do recommend that people talk to someone about their trauma and some place where you're not going to be judged. Yeah. That's the part too, because even though I went through the home invasion and the miscarriages and some other things, it's hard to put that all on a friend, because a friend might not have space for that. Yeah. The friend might not have the capacity for that. They may side with you on everything, and then maybe you need a voice of reckoning that maybe you're the problem, or maybe the problem is because of X, Y, Z, and you have to be able to know when you have a safe place to land. Yeah. And it depends on who you talk to. I'm a firm believer that it is impossible to make it through this life without experiencing trauma. So for anyone who's listening right now, Dr. McGowan, and they would like to learn more about how they can connect with you as a trauma coach, how can they get in contact with you? I have a website. It's drshelita.mcgowan.com. So it's DRSHELITA and my last name.com. Or you could call the clinic at 904-350-5544, and they can schedule with me there. And I do group sessions. I do one-on-one sessions. We do Zoom. So I'm here to listen, and I want people to be better, because I know what it feels like to be in that place.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Shelita, for coming on. Amazing courage, phenomenal bravery to share your story with us this morning on Front Page Jacksonville.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Well, that's going to do it for us today here on Front Page Jacksonville. Ending on that powerful note with Dr. Shelita McGowan. She let you know that you can reach her at drshelita.mcgowan.com. And what's your social media handles?
Dr. Shelita. That's my Instagram. And then Facebook is Shelita Edwards McGowan. Yeah.
There you go. Make sure you check her out on social media as well. Hey, that's going to do it for me this week. Stick around. Gospel Inspirations with Wanda P is coming up next. This has been Front Page Jacksonville. I'll catch you next time. Peace.
Front Page Jacksonville, Sundays from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. For show episodes, go to hot1065fm.com. We are Hot 1065.